I'm sure that many of you are already preparing for AZ-104 certificate, but as I notice, people put a lot of effort in preparing questions and answers for AZ-104, but surprisingly, they miss to prepare for the case study kind of questions that are integral part of AZ-104 certification exam. The result is a shock during the exam, poor grades, and in most cases failing the exam. $165 gone in drain, all because of not preparing for case studies. So if you are someone who do not want to waste $165 and want to surely pass AZ-104, watch this important video entirely dedicated to AZ-104 case studies. Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. Microsoft Azure Administrator is one job profile that many cloud aspirants look forward to, and AZ-104 is the exam certificate that puts you on the right track to become the Microsoft Azure Administrator. But in order to earn this certificate, you must be well prepared, not only with the regular questions and answers, but also with the case studies. It is the case studies where most people miss to prepare, and result is failing the exam. And friends, as I think one of the big reasons for missing the case studies is that not many sample case studies are freely available. And not to mention, it's not easy to put across case studies and describe them in a video. But not anymore. In today's video, I have compiled 6 case studies that are very close to the actual ones that you will get in your AZ-104 real exams. And friends, not just the case studies. In this video, I will also present you with the generic guidelines from Microsoft on case studies, which is a must to understand for anyone who is trying to attempt AZ-104. And along with that, I will also share some tips and tricks that you can use while giving the exam. So now, without wasting any single moment, let's first understand some basics of case studies and guidelines from Microsoft, and then post that 6 case studies are coming up to make sure that you are prepared 100% for AZ-104 exam. Today in this video, I want to quickly talk about a particular type of question called case studies in Microsoft Azure AZ-104 exam. Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. A lot of Azure Cloud learners and our viewers have been constantly asking us about the case studies in AZ-104. This is one type of question that haunts many of us. Undoubtedly, they are one of the toughest and really test your actual practical work knowledge on the subject. Before directly jumping on one of the sample case studies, let's first quickly talk about what is AZ-104. This is especially for those who are new to the Azure certification and may be thinking to directly jump onto the AZ-104. I will also give you other exam details like how many questions to expect, duration of the exam, fees of the certification, and much more. And then I will briefly tell you about the other type of questions other than the case studies that you should expect in AZ-104 certification exam. So let's start with understanding what is AZ-104. AZ-104 is for those IT professionals who want to become Azure administrators or Azure Solution Architect. In order to become Azure Solution Architect, you must clear AZ-305. But before you attempt AZ-305, you must first pass AZ-104. So you can say that AZ-104 is the halfway through the journey to become Azure Solution Architect. Now, as you can read, Microsoft says that candidates for this exam should have subject matter expertise in implementing, managing, and monitoring an organization's Microsoft Azure environment, including virtual network, storage, compute, identity, security, and governance. This clearly means that Microsoft here is not just testing you on your theoretical knowledge, but also on the real working experience. Now here in the second paragraph, you can understand the job duties of Azure Administrator. So this one says that an Azure Administrator often serves as a part of a larger team dedicated to implementing an organization's cloud infrastructure. Azure Administrator also coordinate with other roles to deliver Azure networking, security, database, application development, and DevOps solutions. Further, it says that candidates for this exam should be familiar with operating systems, networking, servers, and virtualization. In addition, professionals in this role should have experience using PowerShell, Azure CLI, Azure Portal, Azure Resource Manager templates, which are also called ARM templates. Moving on, here is the very important news on AZ-104. Here you can see that the English version of this exam was updated on July 28, 2022. The passing score for this exam is 700. And if you scroll a little bit more, you can see the option to schedule the exam. Also note the fees for this exam is 165 USD, and this amount is based on the country or the region in which the exam is proctored. If you take another country, let's take India. And now you can see the change in amount. Now it is 4800 Indian rupees. Besides that, you can also note what are the skills measured in this section of the documentation, which again reminds you about the changes in this exam. And please note the skills measured: manage Azure identities and governance, implement and manage storage, deploy and manage Azure compute resources, configure and manage virtual networking, monitor and manage Azure resources. And also please note the percentage for each of the skills measured. Now let's understand what are the different types of questions other than the case studies that you should expect in this AZ-104 exam, and then I will come back to this documentation again to show you the sample case studies. Now let's understand the exam duration and the question format that you can expect in AZ-104. This is the Microsoft page that talks about exam duration and question type. Not only for AZ-104, if you want details on any other exam like fundamentals or expert level, then also you can refer this page. I will share the link for this page in the description box below. So let's first understand how many questions can you expect in this exam certificate. Microsoft says that most of the exam certificate typically contains 40 to 60 questions. However, the number can vary depending on the exam. Moving on, we are talking about AZ-104, which is an associate level exam. So these are the two sections that relates to us. Please mind that there are two things that Microsoft says. One is associate and expert role level based exam without labs, and associate and expert role based exam that may contain labs. If you want to understand what does that mean, you can read this section here, which is marked by 2 stars. It says that because labs can be removed at any time due to Azure outages, bandwidth issues, etc., Microsoft does not provide a list of exams with labs. When you register for the exam, you will be provided with exam time. When you launch the exam, carefully review the overview page that provide information about what to expect on exam, including if labs are available. So keep this important point in mind. Now let's also read out the exam duration. So without lab, we have an exam duration of 100 minutes and the seat time is 120 minutes. Then if it contains lab, then the exam duration would be 120 minutes and the seat time would be 140 minutes. Now let's check out what are the different questions that you can expect in AZ-104. So here are the sample of the question that Microsoft has given. And the good part is that Microsoft has explained each type of question with a supporting video. So you can see that we have active screen type of question, we have best answer, and then we have build a list, case studies, then you also have drag and drop, hot area questions, multiple choice question, repeated answer choices, short answer, then you have labs, mark review, and then you have review screen. So each type of question is well explained by Microsoft by a supporting video. So come on to this page and understand what are the different kind of questions that you should expect in AZ-104. It's fairly important to understand this different format of questions so that you are not surprised when you're giving the exam. You have a feel of questions when you are sitting for the exam. So really recommended that you come on this page and read more about the format of the questions. Now that you understand how many questions should you expect, what is the time duration, and what are the different type of questions, Let's now concentrate on case studies. Once again, I'm here on the same documentation, and for the case studies, let me scroll back a little, and here under the tips section, you can see there is one section that says that view free sample questions to help prepare for this exam. Please click on this one. And this will open a new page where you can see more insights on type of questions. You can already see multiple type of questions. We have already discussed that, so I will not talk about these anymore. Then I will scroll and keep scrolling until I will reach to a section which is called case study. So let's read this out and get a feel of case studies. Let's read the overview. It says that Contoso Limited is a consulting company. The company has a main office in Vancouver and branch offices in Seattle and New York. Here you can see we have information on existing environment, and the case study tells you that Contoso has two subscriptions named Contoso Sub 1 and Contoso Sub 2. The Contoso Sub 1 has the resource group shown in the following table. You can see that we have resource group 1, which also has a lock which is called lock 1, and it is a read-only type of lock. The location is West US. Then moving on, you can read more details. Resource group 1 contains the resources as shown in the following table. We have disk 1 and we also have virtual network. You can also observe type, tag, IP address space and location for each resource. Then we have details given for Contoso Sub 2, which is the second subscription. And here we can see we have resource group, which is called resource group 2, with lock name called lock 2, and the lock type is delete, and the region is East US. Then I will scroll a little bit more. Now here you can see that resource group 2 contains following resources. We have disk 2, VNet 2, which is a virtual network. You can read all the details. And then it says that the Contoso has a Azure Active Directory tenant named contoso.com that contains the user account shown in the following table. Here you can see in this table we have admin 1 who is domain name administrator. Please pay attention to this section because the question relates to this section, and the office for admin 1 is Vancouver. Then we have admin 2 who is user administrator with office in Vancouver again. Then we have admin 3 who is help desk administrator, and then we have user 1 which is not applicable, so basically the role is not given. Similar case is for user 2. Let's scroll down a little bit more, and here we can read about Azure storage environment information. We have Contoso storage 1, we have 2, 3 and 4, and you can also read the kind of storage for each of them. Then what we are given in the case study is the recovery service. So here we have RSV1, RSV2 and RSV3. Now let's understand what is the problem statement. The problem statement says that administrators share Contoso storage 2 access key with external users, and the replication costs for backup are over budget. And then further on, you can also read the requirements. What are the planned changes? What are the technical requirements? And what are the security requirements? Now let's come down to the question. The question is in the form of multiple choice. The question is asking you that which administrator can implement the planned changes for the new employees. And the options given are option A is admin 1, option B is admin 2, option C is admin 3, and then option D is admin 1 and admin 2. The option E is admin 1 and admin 3. So please read the question very carefully. It says that which administrator can implement the planned changes. And here Microsoft has also given us the answer and logic for the answer. So here you can see that Microsoft says that the answer for this question is option B, which is admin 2. The rationale Microsoft gives is that to bulk create users in Azure AD administration portal, you must be signed in as global administrator or user administrator. Only admin 2 has a user administrator to perform this task. And as we saw in the question above, admin 1 was domain name administrator, and certainly domain name administrator is not eligible to create users in Azure AD administration portal. Thus, the correct answer is user administrator. In case you want to read more on the users and how to add bulk users, you can read this documentation given here, which gives you all the details on bulk creation of users in Azure Active Directory. Coming back to the question, if you will scroll down a little bit more, you can find more questions based on the case studies that we just went through. Friends, it's a great documentation and I must thank Microsoft for bringing this up. It's really helpful for anyone preparing AZ-104. In today's episode, I will give you some basic generic guidelines on case studies. Then of course, I will share a case study and will take questions and answers based on that. In the last section of the video, I will share some of my exam tips on case study that will help you handle them better in the examination. Just to remind you friends that I have already made a video on AZ-104 case study, and in this video I showcased a sample case study from none other than Microsoft. Also, I gave a lot of information around AZ-104 that included details like what is AZ-104, who should do it, what are the different types of questions expected in AZ-104, what is the exam duration, how can you schedule the exam, what is the exam fee, and lot of other things are covered in this video. So do watch this video as well to get an overall understanding on AZ-104. The link is shared in the description box. Now friends, case study is a type of question in which you would be given a real business case or business need or business scenario. It normally starts with an overview followed by the requirements section where you would be presented with business goals. This section also includes technical requirements and user requirements. The other section that can be presented in a case study are planned changes and planned environment. And please do not worry if you don't understand any of these details. We will look upon all these sections when we will take a sample case study. Now let's look at some of the generic guidelines on case studies that you will also find when attempting exam. The first guideline says that case studies are not timed separately. You can use as much exam time as you would like to complete each case. However, there may be additional case studies and section on this exam. You must manage your time to ensure that you are able to complete all the questions included on this exam in the time provided. The second guideline says that to answer the questions included in the case study, you will need to reference information that is provided in the case study. Further, it says that case studies might contain exhibits and other resources that provide more information about the scenario that is described in the case study. Each question is independent of other questions in the case study. Then the third guideline says that at the end of case study, a review screen will appear. This screen allows you to review your answers and to make changes before you move to the next section of the exam. After you begin a new section, you cannot return to this section. So very important to note, once you have moved ahead of a case study, you cannot come back, unlike the other type of questions where you can come back and edit your answers. And friends, at the end of this video, I will give you some tips that you can follow to better handle case study type of questions. So watch the video very carefully and please do not skip any part of the video. Now let's gear up and read our first case study. The first section to appear is overview. So the overview section says that the Blackboard Limited is a manufacturing company that has offices worldwide. Blackboard works with partner organizations to bring products to the market. Blackboard products are manufactured by using blueprint files that the company authors and maintains. The next section we have is existing environment details. So here it says that currently Blackboard uses multiple types of servers for the business operation, including the following. So here we have file servers, we also have domain controllers, and lastly we are given with Microsoft SQL Server. Moving ahead, it says that your network contains an Active Directory forest named blackboard.com. All the servers and client computers are joined to Active Directory. You have a public facing application named App1. App1 is comprised of following three tiers. And here we have a SQL database. We also have a web front end, also given is a processing middle tier. The last line in the existing environment says that each tier consists of 5 virtual machines. Users access the web front end by using HTTPS only. Here, please note that this is HTTPS, which is a secure protocol. It is not HTTP, which is the normal, or should I say the unsecured protocol. Moving ahead, we have requirement section. Here we have plan changes. Here it says that the Blackboard plans to implement the following changes to the infrastructure. The first point says that move all the tiers of App 1 to Azure. Then we have moved the existing product blueprint files to Azure Blob Storage. The third planned change given is that create a hybrid directory to support an upcoming Microsoft 365 migration project. Moving ahead, we have technical requirements. Here it says that Blackboard must meet the following technical requirements. The first one is move all the virtual machines for App 1 to Azure. Then we have minimize the number of open ports between App 1 tiers. The third one is ensure that all the virtual machines for App 1 are protected by backups. The fourth one is copy the blueprint files to Azure over the internet. Fifth one is ensure the blueprint files are stored in archive storage tier. Coming to the sixth one, it says that ensure that partner access to the blueprint files is secure and temporary. Then we have prevent user passwords or hashes of passwords from being stored in Azure. The next technical requirement says that use unmanaged standard storage for the hard disk of the virtual machines. The second last requirement is that ensure that when user join devices to Azure Active Directory, the users uses a mobile phone to verify their identity. So this one here, the second last requirement is kind of multi-factor authentication. And then we have the last requirement that says that minimize administrative effort wherever possible. There is one more type of requirements, and that is user requirements. It says that Blackboard identifies the following requirements for the users. The first one is ensure that only users who are part of a group named Pilot can join the devices to Azure AD. The second one here is that designate a new user named admin1 as the service admin for the Azure subscription. Third one given is admin1 must receive email alerts regarding service outages. And the fourth one given is ensure that a new user named user3 can create network objects for the Azure subscription. So those were all the details given in the case study. We started with an overview section followed by existing environment details. And after that, we had requirement section, which was further divided into three subsections. The first one was planned changes, and the second one was technical requirements. And lastly, we have user requirements. Now let's move ahead and read the question based on this case study. So here comes our first question, which says that you need to configure the device settings to meet the technical requirements and the user requirements. Which two settings should you modify? And here you can see that we are given with some of the settings from the Azure portal, and out of all these settings, you have to choose two settings that will meet the technical requirements and the user requirements. The first setting given here is that user may join the devices to Azure AD. Should we keep the all option here, or should we go for the selected option, or should we go for the none option? Then we have users may register their devices with Azure AD. Here you have to choose between all and none. Similarly, for the require multi-factor authentication to join devices, you have to choose between yes and no. Going ahead, you are also given with the maximum number of devices per user. Here it says the value of 50. Lastly, you are also given with additional local administrator on Azure AD joint devices. Here you have to select between selected and none setting. And friends, before I reveal the correct answer, I just want to add that I will try my best not to just give you the answer, but also give you proper justification. And on top of that, to make you better understand, I will also map the answers with the relevant parts of the case study. So you will know that which requirement or section of the question are we fulfilling. Is it the user requirement or technical requirement or any other section? I hope that you will like this presentation concept. So here comes the answer. The first setting that you have to change is in this section, which says users may join devices to Azure AD. So here, instead of already selected all option, you have to go for the selected option. Then moving on, the other setting that you need to change is this one, which says require multi-factor authentication to join devices. Here you have to choose yes instead of the already selected no. And here comes the justification section, and this tells you that only selected users should be able to join the devices. Which requirement are we talking about? We are talking about the user requirement section. Similarly, the other requirement that we are talking about is that ensure that when users join devices to Azure Active Directory, the users use a mobile phone to verify their identity. And which is this requirement? This one is technical requirement. So you can see that we have met both technical requirement and user requirement as asked in the question. And I have also told you which user requirement and technical requirement are we fulfilling with these answers. So hope you have understood. In case you don't remember the technical and user requirement, please go back to the previous section of the video and reiterate all the requirements. Now let's move ahead with the second question. Here comes the second question, which says that you need to meet user requirement for admin 1. What should you do? Your options are from the Azure Active Directory blade, modify the groups. Second option is from the Azure Active Directory blade, modify the properties. The third option is from the subscription blade, select the subscription and then modify the access control setting. The fourth option is from the subscription blade, select the subscription and then modify the properties. And before I tell you the correct answer, let's see which user requirement are we talking about. So here, my friends, we can see that we are trying to fulfill two user requirements. The first one is designate a new user named admin1 as the service admin for the Azure subscription. And the second one is admin1 must receive email alerts regarding service outages. So friends, whenever you are giving case studies, please read the requirement section very carefully. Microsoft will not clearly outlay which user requirement it is talking about. That is you who has to make that decision. And that's why I'm showing you how the requirements are getting mapped with the question and with the answer. So let's check out the answer for this question. It is option D. From the subscription blade, select the subscription and then modify the properties. Now let's move on to the question number 3. It says that you need to implement a backup solution for app 1 after the application is moved. What should you create first? Should you first create a recovery plan? The option B is an Azure backup server. The option C is a backup policy. The option D is a recovery services vault. Once again, let me tell you which requirement section are we going to fulfill with this question. So this question is actually mapped with 3 requirements. The first one is there are 3 application tier, each with 5 virtual machine. Which requirement is that? This is coming from the existing requirement section. And then we have move all the virtual machines for app 1 to Azure. This is coming from technical requirement. And lastly, we have ensured that all the virtual machines for app 1 are protected by backup. And this is coming again from technical requirements. Now let me show you the answer. The answer is again option D, a recovery services vault. So what is the justification of this? Justification says that a recovery services vault is a logical container that stores the backup data for each protected resource such as Azure virtual machines. When the backup job for a protected resource run, it creates a recovery point inside the recovery services vault. So that's why we have chosen a recovery services vault. And friends, if you are still here, I'm sure that you're learning good. Please make sure to like this video. It takes a lot of effort and time to bring up these kind of case studies. Moving ahead, we have question number 4, and that says that you need to move the blueprint files to Azure. What should you do? Your options are generate an access key, map a drive, and then copy the files by using File Explorer. The second one is use Azure Storage Explorer to copy the files. The third one is use the Azure Import Export service. Fourth one is generate a shared access signature, also known as SAS, map a drive and then copy the files by using File Explorer. And as always, first let me reveal the requirement section that we are trying to fulfill by this question or the answer. And the first requirement that we are fulfilling is move the existing product blueprint file to the Azure Blob Storage. From where this requirement is coming? This requirement is coming from the planned changes section. Moving ahead, we have copied the blueprint files to Azure over the internet. This is coming from the technical requirement section. Okay, so now that you have understood what requirements are we going to fulfill, let me reveal the answer. The answer to this question is option B, use Azure Storage Explorer to copy the files. And here comes the justification. So Azure Storage Explorer is a free tool from Microsoft that allows you to work with Azure storage data on Windows, Mac OS and Linux. You can use it to upload and download data from Azure Blob Storage. And this brings us to the question number 5. The question says that you need to identify storage requirements for the Blackboard incorporations. For each of the following statement, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. Let's read the first statement. It says that Blackboard requires a storage account that supports blob storage. So you have to figure out whether it's a correct statement, then you select yes, otherwise you have to select no. So could you guess the correct answer? If yes, maybe pause the video and write down the correct answer in the comment section. For now, I will reveal the correct answer, which is yes. This is a correct statement. Moving ahead, we have Blackboard requires a storage account that supports Azure Table Storage. This one is no. So this is not a correct statement. And lastly, the third statement says Blackboard requires a storage account that supports Azure File Storage. This one again is a no, which means this is also an incorrect statement. Now let me give you a quick justification. Here it says that Blackboard is moving the existing product blueprint files to Azure Blob Storage. And for this objective, you should use unmanaged standard storage for the hard disk of the virtual machines. And of course, under the hood, page blobs are used for the hard disk of virtual machines. Now let's move on to the question number 6. The question says that you need to recommend a solution for app 1. The solution must meet the technical requirements. What should you include in the recommendation? To answer, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Here you can see that we are given with 2 sections here. Do you actually still remember the technical requirements? In case you don't, please go back to the section of technical requirements and read them once again very carefully. But for now, to ease out your work, here are the requirements that we are talking about. In existing requirement, we are trying to fulfill this one, which says that you have a public facing application named app1, which is also given in the question here. Then it says that app 1 is comprised of the following 3 tiers. The 3 tiers we are given with is SQL database, a web front end, and then we have a processing middle tier. Then the technical requirement that we need to fulfill is that each tier is comprised of 5 virtual machines. Users access the web front end by using HTTPS. So what exactly we need to do? We need to move all the virtual machines for app 1 to Azure, and then we need to minimize the number of open ports between app 1 tiers. So now let's check out the answer. The answer for number of networks is 1. And the answer for number of subnets per virtual network is 3. Now let's jump to the last question for today, and this one is question number 7. The question says that you are planning to move app 1 to Azure. You need to create a network security group, or also known as NSG. You need to recommend a solution to provide users with the access to app 1. What should you recommend? Your options are create an incoming security rule for port 443 from the internet, associate the NSG to the subnet that contains the web servers. The second option is create an outgoing security rule for the port 443 from the internet, associate the NSG to the subnet that contains all the web servers. And the third option is create an incoming security rule for port 443 from the internet, associate the NSG to all the subnets. The last one given is create an outgoing security rule for port 443 from the internet, associate the NSG to all the subnets. Here we are talking about the requirements from the existing environment section, which says that you have a public facing application named app 1. App 1 comprises of 3 following tiers. We have SQL database, we have a front end, and then we also have a processing middle tier. And finally, it says each tier is comprised of 5 virtual machines. User access the web front end by using HTTPS. And the correct answer for this question is option A. Create an incoming security rule for port 443 from the internet. Associate the NSG to the subnet that contains the web servers. And I'm pretty sure that you want to know the justification. Justification is that the users access the web front end by only using HTTPS. And that's why we have chosen option A, where we have to create a security rule for port 443 from the internet and also associate the NSG to the subnets that contains the web servers. I hope you liked the case study and it will surely help you prepare better for the Azure certification. Now here are few tips. First of all, case study type of questions will really test you on your actual working knowledge. You have to answer a series of multiple choice questions, hot area questions, etc. All these questions are designed to test your ability to critically analyze a situation and apply practical Azure knowledge to reach to a solution. So here comes my first tip on case study. Read through the case study and understand the business situation thoroughly. Secondly, a very important exam tip is that you should not assume anything which is not written in the case study. And thirdly, my friends, it's very easy to lose the time track, especially when you're giving the case study type of question. Though there is no time limit for the case study itself, but surely there is a time limit for the overall exam. So be very cautious on the time that you devote on each section. And friends, just so you know, there is a countdown clock in the top corner that you can use to track your remaining time for the exam. Before moving ahead, I'm sure that you are enjoying and learning a lot from today's video. If yes, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends, colleagues, teammates and family. Trust me friends, it takes a lot of time and effort bringing these types of case study videos. A lot of research goes in finding the correct documentation, information and presenting them in a way that you won't find easily on YouTube, and that too for free. So please do this small gesture and like the video. It's only your likes that help us expand and reach to the right audience. Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. Once again today, I am here with a case study type of question on AZ-104. Please note that this is our third part on AZ-104 case studies. So if you have missed watching the earlier two parts, please do watch them. Besides the case studies, I have also shared generic guidelines from Microsoft on case studies, which is a must thing to understand for everyone. And then I have also shared some tips and tricks that you can use while giving the exam. The links for both the earlier parts are right there in the description box. So without wasting any time, let's read our case study. So here comes our case study. First we have overview section, and that says that Blackboard Limited is a consulting company that has a main office in Montreal and branch offices in Seattle and New York. Moving on, we have existing environment details. Let's read them out. Blackboard has an Azure subscription named Sub1 that is linked to an Azure Active Directory tenant. The network contains an on-premises Active Directory domain that syncs with Azure AD tenant. The Azure AD tenant contains the users as shown in the following table. Here you can see that we are given with the details of 4 users. We have user 1 who is a member and role is not given. Similarly, we have user 2 which is of type guest. Then we have user 3 and user 4, both are member. You can see that role is not given for any of the user. Moving on, the case study says that Sub1, which is the subscription, contains 2 resource group named RG1 and RG2 and the virtual networks shown in the following table. Here we see that we have 4 virtual network. Types are also given, and then we are also given with the role. So we have VNet1 which has a type of subnet 1 and subnet 2, and the role is given as VNet2. Similarly, we have VNet2, VNet3 and VNet4. All of them are of type subnet 1. The role is distinct and you can note it here. And here comes more existing environment details. It says that user 1 manages the resources in RG1. User 4 manages the resources in RG2. Sub 1 contains virtual machines that run on Windows Server 2019 as shown in the following table. Here you can see that we are given with the details of virtual machine, actually 5 virtual machines. We have IP address given for each virtual machine along with the location and along with the virtual network or subnet that they are connected to. Moving on, the case study says that no network security groups or NSG are associated to the network interfaces or the subnets. Sub 1 contains the storage account shown in the following table. Now here you can see that we have name of the storage accounts. Then we are also given with the kind of storage account along with the location, file share, and then we also have identity based access for the file share. This is a very important section from the question perspective based on this case study. So let me read this section in a little bit more detail. Here you can see that we are given with 4 storage account. Along with that, we can note that storage 1 is of general purpose version 1. Storage 2 on the other hand is storage v2, which means that it is general purpose version 2. And then we have storage 3, which is blob storage, storage 4, which is file storage. Friends, it's very important that you note the kind of storage that we have associated with each storage account. Although throughout the questions, I will bring the relevant sections from the case studies so that we can relate the questions with the case study. And here comes our requirement section that starts with planned changes. And this section says that Blackboard plans to implement the following changes. The first one is create a blob container named container1 and a file share named share1 that will use a cool storage tier. Then it says that create a storage account named storage5 and configure storage replication for the blob service. The last plan change given is create an NSG. What is NSG? NSG is network security group named NSG1 that will have the custom inbound security rules as shown in the following table. So here we are given with the custom inbound security rule. We are given with priority, port, protocol, source, destination and action. Moving on, the case study says that associate the NSG1 to the network interface of virtual machine 1. Then it says that create an NSG named NSG2 that will have a custom outbound security rules as shown in the following table. Further, it says that associate NSG2 to the VNet1/subnet2. You can see here that we are given with the custom outbound rule. We are given with priority, port, protocol, source, destination and action. Please mind that this table below is the custom outbound security rule and the table above is the custom inbound security rules. Now I have seen that many people get really confused when it comes to the priority of the NSG. The confusion to many people is that which priority will execute further. Will it be the lower number or will it be the higher number? So let me clear out that confusion. Let's go to the Microsoft documentation. So this is the Microsoft documentation on Network Security Group or NSG. If you scroll a little bit more, you will reach to this section which says security rule, and here you can understand what does a priority mean and how it actually works. Let's read this section. It says a number between 100 and 4096 rules are processed in the priority order with lower numbers processed before higher numbers. This is a very important concept here. The lower numbers processed before higher number. So you can see that lower number are given precedence over the higher number, which is sometimes a little counterintuitive, but yes, this is how it is. Further, it says because the lower numbers have higher priority. Once traffic matches a rule, processing stops. A very important concept is coming here. It says as a result, any rule that exists with lower priorities that have the same attributes as rules with the higher priorities are not processed. So friends, on this documentation, not only you can understand on priority, you can also understand source and destination, what are the different protocols supported by NSG, direction, port range and action. So all in all, a very important Microsoft documentation. The link for this documentation I have shared in the description box. Now let's read the last section of the case study and then we will jump to the question and answer based on this case study. So let's read out these technical requirements. We have Blackboard must meet the following technical requirements. The first one is create container 1 and share 1. Use the principle of least privilege. Create an Azure AD security group named Group 4. The fourth one is backup the Azure file shares and virtual machines by using Azure Backup. Then we have trigger an alert if virtual machine 1 or virtual machine 2 has less than 20 GB of free space on volume C. The sixth technical requirement says that enable user 1 to create Azure policy definitions and user 2 to assign Azure policy to the RG1. The seventh one says that create an internal basic Azure load balancer named LB1 and connect the load balancer to VNet1 and Subnet1. Then we have enable flow logging for IP traffic from virtual machine 5 and retain the flow logs for a period of 8 months. The last technical requirement is whenever possible grant group 4 Azure role-based access Azure RBAC read-only permissions to the Azure file shares. So that were all the details given in the case study. Now let's read the questions and try to answer them. So let's read our first question. The question says that you need to ensure that user 1 can create initiative definitions and user 4 can assign initiatives to the RG2. RG2 is nothing but resource group. The solution must meet the technical requirements. Which role should you assign to each user? To answer, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Please note that each correct selection is worth 1 point. Here you can see that we are given with user 1 and user 4, and for each user we are given with some roles. Let's read the roles for user 1. Here we have contributor to the RG1, then we have contributor to the sub 1 which is subscription 1, then we have security admin for RG1, and lastly resource policy contributor for the sub 1. On the other hand, for the user 4 we have contributor to the RG2, contributor to the sub 1, security admin for sub 1, and then we have resource policy contributor for RG2. Now friends, to better answer this question, you must first understand 3 terms related to the Azure policy. The first one is policy, of course. The second one is initiatives, and lastly you have to understand what is assignments. We also need to understand the contributor role. So let me take you to the Microsoft site to understand all these concepts. So here I am on the Microsoft site that gives all related information on Azure policy. So what is Azure policy? Azure policy helps to enforce organizational standards and to access compliance at scale. Through its compliance dashboard, it provides an aggregated view to evaluate the overall state of the environment. Now let's understand what is policy definition. So as you can read here, policy definition, the journey of creating and implementing a policy in Azure policy begins with creating a policy definition. Every policy definition has conditions under which it's enforced. And further, it has a defined effect that takes place if conditions are met. So you can read more on Azure policy here. Now let's move our concentration and understand our next term, which is initiatives. In the same documentation page, now I am in the section initiative definition. This one says that an initiative definition is a collection of policy definitions that are tailored towards achieving a singular overarching goals. Initiative definitions simply managing and assigning policy definition. They simply by grouping a set of policy as one single item. For example, you create an initiative titled Enable Monitoring in Microsoft Defender for Cloud with a goal to monitor all the available security recommendations in your Microsoft Defender for Cloud instance. So you can read all about initiative definition in this section. Now let's move on to understand what is assignments. So here in the assignment section, same documentation. Here you can read that an assignment is a policy definition or initiative that has been assigned to a specific scope. This scope could range from a management group to an individual resource. The term scope refers to all the resources, resource group, subscription or management group that the definition is assigned to. So friends, please read and understand these important terms, policy, initiative and assignment in this documentation. Now before I leave this documentation, let's take a quick look on the contributor role. Friends, in the same documentation, there is a section which is called Azure RBAC permissions in Azure policy. Here you can read that many built-in roles grant permissions to Azure policy resources. The resource policy contributor role includes most Azure policy operation, owner has full rights. Both contributor and readers have access to all read Azure policy operation. Further, you can read that contributor may trigger resource remediation but cannot create or update definitions and assignment. User access administrator is necessary to grant the managed identity on deploy if not exist or modify assignment necessary permission. Very important section to answer these kind of questions. Coming back to the presentation, we read on the Microsoft documentation that the resource policy contributor role can do most Azure policy operations. Owner has full rights. On the other hand, both contributor and reader have access to all Azure policy operations. With this knowledge in mind, let's try to find the answer for the user 1. So now, because user 1 should be enabled so that he or she can create initiative definitions, and for this we would need to assign role on subscription level. That's why the correct answer for user 1 is resource policy contributor for subscription 1. Now for the user 4, the question clearly says that the user 4 can assign initiatives to RG2, which means that now we are talking on resource group level. So the correct answer for user 4 is resource policy contributor for RG2. Now let's move on to the next question. Question number 2. The question says that you need to create container 1 and share 1. Which storage accounts should you use for each resource? To answer, select the appropriate option in the answer area and each correct selection is worth 1 point. And here you can see that we are given with container 1 and share 1. So we have to pick which storage should we use for container 1 and share 1. Now friends, for a better understanding, let me bring out the section from the case study that you need to consider for answering this question. So here it comes, the section from existing environment, which has the information that we need to answer this question. Now it's very important to relate the case study with the question, and friends, please mind that these kind of help or hints will not be given in the actual Azure exams. This is just to help you and give you a good idea on how to relate questions with the overall case study. And of course, if you're still here learning with me, please do not miss to give a like to this video. It takes a lot of efforts to bring such complex case studies to you and explain them in a manner that everyone understands. Your likes will help these videos to reach out to more and more Azure learners and really boost my morale. Now coming to the container 1, if you remember in the planned changes section, it was given that the container 1 is a blob container. Now carefully analyze all the storage given here. We cannot create a blob storage in storage 1 because it's general purpose version 1. Similarly, we cannot create a blob storage in storage 4, which is a file storage. So what are the two options we are left with? We are left with storage 2, which is a general purpose version 2, and storage 3, which is a blob storage. And that's why, my friends, the correct answer for container 1 is storage 2 and storage 3 only. And now let me come up to the share 1. Once again, I'm referring to the planned changes section, and in that section it was mentioned that share 1 is a file share that will use cool storage tier. And that's why, my friends, it's only storage 2 general purpose version 2 that can support cool storage tier, and that's exactly what our answer is as well. By the way, just so you know, there are 3 storage tier: hot, cool and archive. And it's very important to understand these 3 type of tiers. That's why I'm here on the Microsoft documentation. So let's begin with the hot tier. The documentation says that an online tier optimized for storing data that is accessed or modified frequently. The hot tier has highest storage cost but the lowest access cost. On the other hand, for cool tier, the documentation says that an online tier optimized for storing data that is infrequently accessed or modified. Data in cool tier should be stored for a minimum of 30 days. The cool tier has lower storage cost and higher access cost compared to hot tier. Lastly, we have archive tier, and the documentation says that an online tier optimized for storing data that is rarely accessed and that has flexible latency requirements on the order of hours. Data in the archive tier should be stored for a minimum of 180 days. So please keep these important considerations around all these tiers. The link for this documentation is also available in the description box. And here comes the question 3 based on the case study, and this question says that you need to create storage 5. The solution must support the planned changes. Which type of storage account should you use and which account should you configure as the destination storage account? To answer, select the appropriate option in the answer area, and please note that each correct selection is worth 1 point. And here, as you can see, that we are given with account kind and destination, and for each we are given with some of the options. Let's begin with account kind. So for account kind, we have blob storage, blob storage, then we have storage which is general purpose version 1, and then we have storage v2 which is general purpose version 2. Now friends, as you may have noticed that the question talks about supporting the planned changes. So let me quickly bring up the planned changes section so that we can easily relate the case study section with this question. Here it comes. And friends, as I mentioned earlier, these kind of hints will not be given in the actual examination. These are here just to facilitate your understanding and make it easier for you to prepare for the exam. Now in this section, you can find all the details around storage 5. This section says that create a storage account named storage 5 and configure storage replication for the blob service. So friends, can you guess which kind of storage account will support this requirement? Well, it is none other than storage v2 general purpose version 2. And that's our answer for the account kind. Now for the destination. If you remember the specifications of all the storage in the existing environment details section, it was storage 2, that's a general purpose version 2, and that's why storage 2 is the correct answer for the destination. So that was all for today. I hope you liked this interesting case study. Please do not miss to watch the earlier 2 parts. The more you understand case studies, the better your chances to pass AZ-104. And friends, before we jump on to the next case study, it's important to tell that to help you prepare overall for AZ-104, we do have this video with 190 questions with answers, and proper Microsoft documentation is also given for each question so that you can verify the answer and also do some self-learning. And on top of it, you get a free PDF file with 190 questions with answers. Details are shared in this video itself. So do watch this video as well. Once you have completed this video on case studies, the links are shared in the description box. And friends, in case some of you is also interested in the data part of Azure, we also have this video on DP203. This video contains 216 questions with answers on DP203 along with 3 case studies. And like I mentioned in this video also, you will get the free PDF file containing all the question and answers. And please wait, we have lot of videos for the absolute Azure beginners. So if you are someone who is just starting with Azure, we have series on AZ-900, AI-900 and DP-900. The links for all these series are shared in the description box. Case studies are kind of questions that not only prepare you for the certifications like AZ-104, but also take your overall cloud understanding to a whole new level. Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. Once again today, here I am with a case study kind of question on AZ-104. This is our part 4 on AZ-104 case studies. If you have missed watching the earlier 3 parts, I highly recommend you to watch them. Case studies, my friend, are not easy and you need a lot of practice to master them. Links for the earlier 3 parts are right there in the description box. So let's begin with one more interesting case study. So let's begin our case study with the overview section. The section says that Blackboard Incorporations is a consulting company that has a main office in Montreal and 2 branch offices in Seattle and New York. The Montreal office has 2000 employees, the Seattle office has 1000 employees, and the New York office has 200 employees. All the resources used by Blackboard are hosted on premises. Blackboard creates a new Azure subscription. Then the question says that Azure Active Directory tenant uses a domain named Blackboard on Microsoft.com. The tenant uses the premium P1 pricing tier. Here we can see that we have the information about the existing environment. Let's read it out. It says the network contains an Azure Active Forest named Blackboard.com. All the domain controllers are configured as DNS servers and host the Blackboard.com DNS zone. Now, Blackboard has a finance, human resources, sales, research, and information technology departments. Each department has an organizational unit that contains all the accounts of the respective department. All the user account have the department attribute set to their respective department. New users are added frequently. Blackboard.com contains a user named user1. All the offices are connected by using private connections. Blackboard has a data center in Montreal and Seattle offices. Each office has a firewall that can be configured as a VPN device. All infrastructure servers are virtualized. The virtualization environment contains the server in the following table. Here we can see that we have two servers, server 1 and server 2. Here we can see the server 1 is a VMware vCenter server and the server 2 is a Hyper-V host. We can also see that the server 1 contains virtual machine 1 and the server 2 contains virtual machine 2. Now let's move ahead and see some more information on existing environment. This one says that the Blackboard uses two web applications named App 1 and App 2. Each instance of each web application requires 1 GB of memory. The Azure subscription contains the resources in the following table. Here we can see that we have resources here, which is VNet 1, Virtual Network 1, and then we have VM3, which is a virtual machine. Again, we have one more virtual machine, which is VM4. Then the question says that the network security team implements several network security groups, which are also known as NSGs. Moving ahead, we have the requirement section. Here we start with the planned changes, and it says that Blackboard planned to implement the following changes. The first one is deploy Azure Express route to the Montreal office. The second one says migrate the virtual machines hosted on server 1 and server 2 to Azure. The third one says synchronize on-premises Active Directory to Azure Active Directory. And lastly, we have migrate App 1 and App 2 to two Azure web apps named Web App 1 and Web App 2. Moving ahead, we have technical requirements, and this one says that the Blackboard must meet the following technical requirements. The first one is ensure that the web app can adjust the number of instances automatically based on the load and can scale up to 5 instances. Second one says ensure that the virtual machine 3 or VM3 can establish outbound connections over TCP port 8080 to application servers in Montreal office. Then we have as third one, ensure that routing information is exchanged automatically between Azure and the routers in the Montreal office. Fourth one says enable Azure multi-factor authentication MFA for the users in the finance department only. Fifth one is ensure that webapp2.azurewebsites.net can be accessed by using named app2.blackboard.com. Moving ahead with the sixth one, it says connect the New York office to VNet 1 over the internet by using an encrypted connection. Then we have seventh one, which says create a workflow to send an email message when the settings of VM4 are modified. Eighth one says create a custom Azure role named role1 that is based on a reader role. And then the last one, the ninth one, says minimize the cost wherever possible. So that was all the information given in the case study. We started with overview section, then we moved on to the existing environment detail, and lastly we studied about the technical requirements. Now let's move to the question and answer section. And here comes the question number 1 based on this case study. The question says that you discover that VM3 does not meet the technical requirements. You need to verify whether the issues relates to the NSG. What should you do? Here you can see the options given are diagram in VNet 1, diagnostic settings in Azure Monitor. The third option is diagnose and solve the problems in Traffic Manager profiles. Then the fourth option given is the security recommendation in Azure Advisor. The fifth option is IP flow verify in Azure Network Watcher. Now let me show you what technical requirement are we talking about. Here it comes. We can see that as per the question, we need to ensure that VM3 can establish outbound connections over TCP port 8080 to the application servers in Montreal office. This was given in technical requirements, and now the question says that VM3 is not able to meet this technical requirement. And we need to figure out whether this issue relates to the NSG or network security groups or not. And the best way to do that is use the IP flow verify in the Azure Network Watcher. Now let me show you the Microsoft documentation on IP flow verify. So here we are on the official Microsoft documentation that gives you an introduction to the IP flow verify in Azure Network Watcher. Here you can read that IP flow verify checks if a packet is allowed or denied to or from a virtual machine. The information consists of direction, protocol, local IP and remote IP, local port and a remote port. If the packet is denied by a security group, the name of the rule is denied, the packet is returned. Then in the second para of this documentation, you can read that the IP flow verify looks at the rules at all the network security groups. Now, if you remember the question carefully, the question wanted us to diagnose whether the issue was related to the NSG or not. And as we read in this documentation, IP flow verify can help us to do that. So that's why we have chosen option E as the answer to this question. Now friends, before moving ahead to the next question, let me remind you that in earlier 3 parts, I have shared generic guidelines from Microsoft on case studies. Along with that, I have also shared some tips and tricks that you can use while giving the exam and secure much higher grades in AZ-104 certification. The link for all the earlier parts are right there in the description box. Now let's move ahead with the second question. The question says that you need to meet the technical requirements of VM4. What should you create and configure? Your options are an Azure Notification Hub. The second option is an Azure Event Hub. The third option is an Azure Logic App. The fourth option is an Azure Services Bus. Now let me show you what were the technical requirements related to the VM4. In technical requirements section of the case study, we read that create a workflow to send email message when the setting of VM4 are modified. So that's the exact technical requirement that we have to fulfill for this question. And based on this technical requirement, I have chosen option B, an Azure Event Hub, and option C, an Azure Logic App as the answer for this question. Now let me give you my justification for that. First thing we note in this technical requirement that we have to send an email when the VM4 settings are modified. So basically we need to capture the modification event of a virtual machine named VM4. And to capture the events in Azure, we need Event Hub. Also, the technical requirement says that we need to send the email message, and for this we have chosen an Azure Logic App. And friends, if you want to understand the event grid and the Azure Logic apps, then this is a very good tutorial from Microsoft. I have given the link for this tutorial in the description box. You can read whenever you have a suitable time. Now let's move ahead to the question number 3. The question number 3 says that you need to recommend a solution to automate the configuration for the finance department users. The solution must meet the technical requirements. What should you include in the recommendation? Your options are Azure AD B2C. The second option is dynamic groups and conditional access policies. The third option is Azure AD identity protection. And the fourth one is an Azure Logic App and the Microsoft Identity Management MIM client. Now let me show you the technical requirement which the question is referring to. This one comes here. It says enable Azure multi-factor authentication or MFA for the users in the finance department only. So this is the technical requirement that we have to meet. And the correct answer that I have chosen to meet this technical requirement is option B, dynamic groups and conditional access policies. And friends, in case you want to understand how to enable per user Azure Active multi-factor authentication to secure sign-in events, then this is the documentation that you can refer. I will not read the entire documentation. The link is right there in the description box and you can visit this documentation whenever you have suitable time. Here comes the question number 4. The question says that you need to ensure that VM1 can communicate with VM4. The solution must minimize the administrative effort. What should you do? Your options are create an NSG and associate the NSG to VM1 and VM4. Then we have establish peering between VNet 1 and VNet 3. The third option is assign VM4 an IP of 10.0.1.5/24, and the last option is create a user defined route from VNet 1 to VNet 3. Now friends, to be honest, as I see, this question probably have some missing information, but never mind. We have what we have and we have to make the sense out of the information that is given in this question. Now here I show you the relevant section from the case study that are related to this question. Here you can see that the VM1 is here mentioned in the question as well. So we have VM1 on the server 1, which means what? This means that VM1 is on the server which is on premises. And we have to ensure the communication between VM1 and VM4. Where is VM4? VM4 is a virtual machine, which means that VM4 is essentially on Azure cloud. So hopefully now you understand that in this question, we are trying to connect an on-premises machine to the machine in Azure network. And for this task, the best option is the site-to-site VPN connection in Azure portal. And related to that information, the best answer or the best option given in this question is option C, assign VM4 an IP of 10.0.1.5/24. And friends, if you want to learn how to create a site-to-site VPN connection in Azure portal, then this is the Microsoft documentation. It's a very important documentation from the exam perspective because there are many questions either in the form of case studies or the regular questions on AZ-104 that are related to these kind of setup. And this, my friend, is a very lengthy documentation. It's not possible for me to go through each and every details on this documentation. So I have left the documentation link in the description box. And friends, if you feel that we are doing a good work in bringing the Azure learning to you for free, please like the video. It really helps our channel to grow and bring more quality content for you to learn. And with that, we have reached to the question number 5. The question says that you need to meet the connection requirements of the New York office. What should you do? To answer, select the appropriate option in the answer area. And please note that each correct selection is worth 1 point. So here, my friends, you have to answer on 2 levels. First, you have to tell what should you do on the Azure portal. And then you have to answer what should be done in the New York office. Looking at the Azure portal options, we have create an express route circuit only. Then we have create virtual network gateway only. The third option given is create virtual network gateway and a local network gateway. Fourth option is create an express route circuit and on-premises data gateway. The fifth option is create virtual network gateway and on-premises data gateway. And friends, the correct answer to this part of the question is to create a virtual network gateway and a local network gateway. Moving on with the New York office, we have deploy express route. Then the second option is deploy a direct access server. The third option is implement a web application proxy. The fourth option is create an express route circuit and on-premises data gateway. The fifth option is configure a site-to-site VPN connection. And the correct answer for this part of the question is configure a site-to-site VPN connection. Now let me give you the clarification or justification for the answer we have chosen. So here it comes, the justification for the first part of the question, where we choose create a virtual network gateway and a local network gateway. So friends, virtual network gateway is a resource that provides a virtual VPN appliance for the VNet. It is responsible for the routing of traffic from the on-premises network to the VNet. And then we have local network gateway, which is an abstraction of on-premises VPN appliances. Network traffic from the cloud applications to the on-premises network is routed through this gateway. So that was the clarification of why we have chosen virtual network gateway and local network gateway. Moving on to the second part of the question, where we chose configure a site-to-site VPN connection. And friends, here I have given a picture which shows you different tier, but this picture is exactly not related to our answer. This is just to make you understand how to connect between on-premises network to the network in the Azure cloud. So basically, my friends, we are connecting New York office, which surely is on premises, to VNet 1, and VNet 1 is on Azure. And once again, I will reiterate as we discussed in the question 4 as well. If we want to connect something on premises with that of Azure, then we need to have a site-to-site VPN connection. So that's why we have chosen site-to-site VPN connection as the answer to this question. Now let's move ahead with the question number 6, which is the last question in today's case study. Let's read the question. The question says that you need to implement role 1. Which command should you run before you create role 1? To answer, select the appropriate option in the answer area. And please note that each correct selection is worth 1 point. So here, my friends, you are given with a part or a section of a command. You have to choose what comes before this command, and you also have to choose what comes after this command. Now let me reveal the answer and let's see what the exact command becomes. Here you can see the first part of the command becomes get AZ role definition. The middle part is already given, which is dash name and reader. Then we have a pipe symbol. And now comes the last part of this command, which is convert to JSON. So friends, the full command will look something like this, which is convert AZ role definition dash name reader. And then we have this pipeline symbol here. The last section is convert to JSON. So that was all for today. I hope you liked this interesting case study. Please do not miss to watch the earlier 3 parts. More case studies are coming up in the subsequent videos, so please do subscribe to the channel and press that bell icon to receive the timely notifications. Preparing for AZ-104 exam and missing on case studies can adversely hit your chances to pass the exam. Case studies are the kind of questions that not only prepare you for the exams, but also take your overall cloud understanding to a whole new level. Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. Once again today, here I am with a case study type of question on AZ-104. And this is our part 5 on AZ-104 case studies. In case you missed to watch our earlier 4 parts, I highly recommend you to watch all of them. Solving case studies need practice, and that's why we bring to you a lot of case studies, and today's case study is a little different but very interesting. So let's begin our part 5 with one more very interesting case study. Starting with the overview section, we have Blackboard Insurance is an insurance company that has 3 offices in Miami, Tokyo and Bangkok. Each office has 5,000 users. Now we are given with some information on Active Directory environment. We can read that Blackboard Insurance has a single domain Active Directory forest named blackboardinsurance.com. The functional level of the forest is Windows Server 2012. Then it says that you recently provisioned an Azure Active Directory tenant, and post that we are given with some network infrastructure details. Here it says that each office has a local data center that contains all the servers for that office. Each office has a dedicated connection to the internet, and each office has several link load balancers that provide access to the servers. Moving on, we have some licensing issues, and this section says that you attempt to assign a license in Azure to several users and receive the following error message. And here we can see the error message says that licenses are not assigned. License agreement failed for one user. Then it says that you verify that the Azure subscription has available licenses. Moving on, we are given with the planned changes information. It says that Blackboard Insurance plans to open a new office in Paris. The Paris office will contain 1,000 users who will be hired during next 12 months. All the resources used by the Paris office users will be hosted in Azure. Next, we have planned Azure AD infrastructure, and this section says that on-premises Active Directory domain will be synchronized to Azure AD. All the client computers in Paris office will be joined to an Azure AD domain. Moving ahead, and we have information on planned Azure networking infrastructure. This section says that you plan to create the following networking resources in a resource group called All Resources. Then it says that the default Azure system routes, that will be the only routes used to route the traffic. Further, we have a virtual network named Paris VNet that will contain two subnets named subnet 1 and subnet 2. Then it says a virtual network named client resources -vnet that will contain one subnet named client subnet. Lastly, it says a virtual network named all offices -vnet that will contain two subnets named subnet 3 and subnet 4. Then the section says that you plan to enable peering between Paris VNet and all offices VNet. You will enable the use remote gateway settings for Paris VNet peering. And finally, it says you plan to create a private DNS zone named blackboardinsurance.local and set registration network to client resources -vnet virtual network. Moving ahead in the question, we have some information on planned Azure computer infrastructure. And this one says that each subnet will contain several virtual machines that will run either on Windows Server 2012 R2. Also, we have Windows Server 2016, or last option is Red Hat Linux. Then we have some details on department requirements. It says that Blackboard Insurance identifies the following requirements for the company's department. The first one is web administrator will deploy Azure web apps for the marketing department. Each web app will be added to a separate resource group. The initial configuration of the web apps will be identical. The web administrators have permissions to deploy web apps to resource groups. And then it says that during the testing phase, auditors in the finance department must be able to review all the Azure costs from the past week. And now coming up are the authentication requirements. This one says that the users in Miami office must use Azure Active Directory seamless single sign-on when accessing resources in Azure. So that was all what was given in the case study. And this case study had different section unlike the previous case studies that we covered in earlier 4 parts. We started with an overview section, then we were given details on Active Directory environment, network infrastructure, licensing issues. Then we also checked on planned changes, planned Azure AD infrastructure. We also looked upon planned Azure networking infrastructure, planned Azure compute infrastructure, department requirements, and then finally we saw authentication requirements. Now let's move ahead and see the questions based on this case study. So here comes our question number 1 based on the case study that we just read. The question says that you need to prepare the environment to ensure that the web administrator can deploy the web apps as quickly as possible. Which 3 actions should you perform in sequence? Your options given are: from the template service, select the template and then share the template to the web administrators. Secondly, we have create a resource group and then deploy a web app to the resource group. The third option given is from the automation script blade of the resource group, click parameter tab. The fourth option is from the automation script blade of resource group, click deploy. Then the fifth option is from the automation accounts service, add an automation account. The last one is from the automation script blade of resource group, click add to library. Now here, my friends, it's very important that not only you have to tell the 3 actions, but you have to tell all these 3 actions in a correct sequence. And here comes the answer to this question. First, we have from the automation accounts service, add an automation account. The second step that you need to take is from the automation script blade of the resource group, click deploy, and lastly from the template service, select the template and then share the template to the web administrators. Moving on to the next question, question number 2, it says that which blade should you instruct the finance department auditors to use? Your options are partner information, the second option is overview, the third option is payment methods, and the fourth option is invoices. And friends, we all know that finance department is interested always to see the invoice. They are only interested to know what expense you are incurring. And that's why the correct answer for this question is option D, invoices. And this is the Microsoft documentation where you can validate our answer. It says download or view your Azure billing invoices. Here you can see it's given that how to download your Azure invoices PDF file. You can see the entire process. Here you can see download invoices for an individual subscription. The first step says that you have to select your subscription from the subscription page in the Azure portal as the user with access to the invoice, and then you have to select the invoice. Here you can see, my friends, this one here under the billing we have an invoice option, and this is where you can download all the invoices related to your subscription. You can read more on this documentation, how to enable your finance department to know and keep a tab what are your exact expenses in Azure Cloud. And here is a quick reminder to all our viewers. Please watch the earlier 4 parts, Microsoft generic guidelines on case studies, along with tips and tricks that you can use while giving the exam. All this and much more interesting stuff is shared in the earlier 4 parts. The links for all the earlier parts are right there in the description box. And now on your screen is question number 3. The question says that you need to prepare the environment to meet the authentication requirements. Which 2 actions should you perform? Each correct answer presents the part of the solution, and please note that each correct selection is worth 1 point. The options given are, the first option is Azure Active Directory Identity Protection and an Azure policy. The second option is a Recovery Services Vault and a backup policy. The third one is an Azure Key Vault and access policy. The fourth option is an Azure Storage Account and an access policy. The correct answer for this question is option B and option D. Moving ahead with the question number 4, which is a very important question. Look at the question. It says that you need to define a custom domain name for the Azure AD to support the planned infrastructure. Which domain name should you use? Your options are join the client computers in Miami office to Azure AD. The second option is add HTTP autologon Microsoft Azure AD to the internet zone of each client computer in Miami office. The third option is allow inbound TCP port 8080 to the domain controllers in Miami office. Then the fourth option is install Azure AD Connect on a server in Miami office and enable pass-through authentication. The last option is install Active Directory Federation Services role on a domain controller in Miami office. Now friends, could you remotely even link this question with that of the details given in the case study? Maybe, maybe not. But let me now list all the sections from the case study that are linked to this question. Here it comes. The first section which is linked is network infrastructure. If you remember the case study, we were given that each office has a local data center that contains all the servers from that office. Each office has a dedicated connection to internet. The second section which is connected is Active Directory environment, and that said that Blackboard Insurance has a single domain Active Directory forest named blackboardinsurance.com. The functional level of the forest is Windows Server 2012. The last section which is linked is planned Azure AD infrastructure. This section said that on-premises Active Directory domain will be synchronized to Azure AD. Now let me first show you the answers or the options that we have chosen, and then I will give you the proper justification for the same. So here it comes, option B and option D. And now comes the justification for the same. Every Azure AD directory comes with an initial domain name in the form of domain name on Microsoft.com. The initial domain name cannot be changed or deleted, but you can add your corporate domain name to the Azure AD as well. For example, your organization probably has other domain names used to do the business and users who sign in to your corporate domain name. And friends, adding custom domains in Azure AD allows you to assign usernames in the directory that are familiar to the users, such as alice@contoso.com instead of alice@domain name on Microsoft.com. So that was the justification why we have chosen option B and option D as the answers to this question. Preparations for AZ-104 exam takes a considerable time, practice and a structured study. In spite of all the planning, I have seen many people missing on the case study, thus failing the AZ-104 exam. Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. Here at the Tech Blackboard, we have helped so many Azure learners when it comes to the case study kind of questions. Not only we tell you the correct answers, but we also let you know the logic behind the same and how you can prepare so that you never miss a case study in the examinations. So here in the part 6 today, I bring to you an interesting case study. Let's start reading the case study without wasting any further time. So let's begin our case study with the overview section. It says that Blackboard Limited is a consulting company. The company has a main office in Vancouver and branch offices in Seattle and New York. Moving ahead, we have some information on existing environment, which starts with Azure environment. It says that Blackboard has two Azure subscriptions named Blackboard Sub 1 and Blackboard Sub 2. The Blackboard Sub 1 has the resource group shown in the following table. Here we have resource group 1, which has a lock named lock 1. The lock type is read only and the location is West US. Then we have resource group 1 contains the resources shown in the following table. We have disk 1, which is a managed disk. The tag is RG1. IP address space is of course not applicable. The location is West US. Moving ahead, we have VNet 1, which is a virtual network. Tag is RG1. And then we have IP address space, which is given as 10.40.0.0/20. Location again is West US. Moving on, we have Blackboard Sub 2 has the resource group shown in the following table. Here we have resource group 2, which has a lock named lock 2, which is of delete type. Earlier we had a lock of read only type, and now we have a delete type of record. The location is East US. Moving ahead, it says that resource group 2 contains the resources shown in the following table. Similar to the resource group 1, here also we have disk 2, which is a managed disk. Tag is RG2 and the IP address space is not applicable. Location this time is East US. Moving on, we have VNet 2, which is a virtual network. Tag is RG2 again and the IP address space is 10.40.0.0/22. Location is East US. Further, it says that Blackboard has an Azure Active Directory tenant named blackboard.com that contains the user accounts shown in the following table. Here we have user as admin 1, admin 2, admin 3, and the role given for admin 1 is domain name administrator, whereas admin 2 is user administrator. The third one, admin 3, is help desk administrator. Location for all the admins are Vancouver. Then we have user 1 and user 2. The role is not applicable. Office location is New York and Seattle respectively. Moving ahead, we have details on Azure storage environment. It says Blackboard Sub 1 contains the storage account shown in the following table. Here we have 4 storage accounts: Blackboard Storage 1, Storage 2, Storage 3 and Storage 4. And Storage 1 is of kind Storage version V2, which is also known as General Purpose version 2. Then we have Storage 2 as File Storage, Storage 3 as Blob Storage, and then we have Storage 4 as Storage, which is now given as General Purpose version 1. Moving ahead, it says that Blackboard has a recovery service vaults shown in the following table. And here we have three recovery service vaults: RSV1, RSV2, RSV3. Then the details on backup contains is also given. We have Azure file shares for RSV1. Then we have virtual machines for RSV2 and no items is given for RSV3. Moving ahead, we have storage replication type, and this one is same for all the recovery service vaults. It's given as geo-redundant storage. Let's move ahead to the requirement section. Here we have planned changes. It says that Blackboard plans to implement the following changes. The first one is configure backups to use locally redundant storage (LRS) replication whenever possible. The second one is hire 125 new employees, each of whom will require an account created in the tenant. The third one is delegate user 1 to manage all the user and group accounts in New York office. Fourth one says that delegate user 2 to manage all the users and group accounts in Seattle office. And then fifth one says deploy a new Azure virtual machine named dev VM1 that will run on Windows 10. On the sixth one, we have create peering between VNet 1 and VNet 2. And the last one, the seventh one, is given as move disk 1 to resource group 2. Let's move ahead. Now we are given with technical requirements. It says that the Blackboard must meet the following technical requirements. The first one is for supported storage account, data not accessed for 60 days must be moved automatically to the cool storage. Data not accessed for 120 days must be moved automatically to archive storage. Let's move ahead. The second one says that dev VM1, which is a virtual machine, must be accessible from the Azure portal over TLS and provide seamless RDP/SSH connectivity. The third one says delegated administrative permissions must be scoped to specific location. And then we have administrative effort and cost must be minimized whenever possible. The last one says the principle of least privilege must be used. In the next section, we have details given on security requirements. Here it says that the Blackboard must meet the following security requirements. The first one is user access to storage account data must be granted for a specified start and expiration date and time. Then it says that the dev VM1 must be protected from port scanning from outside virtual network. Lastly, we are given with storage account access key must not be shared directly with the users. So those were all the details given in the case study. It's always better to rewind the video and watch all the sections in the case study once more before we move to the question and answer section. Now let's move ahead and read our question number 1 based on this case study. So here comes the question number 1. The question says that which administrator can implement the plan changes for the new employees. The first option given is admin 1 only. The second option is admin 2 only. The third one is admin 3 only. The fourth one is admin 1 and admin 2 only. And the fifth one is admin 1 and admin 3 only. Now friends, before answering these questions, it's very important for you to understand which section of the case study actually relates to this question. So here I present you the sections from the case study in which you will find all the details that we need to answer this question. You can see that first section from the case study is coming from existing environment where information for all the users are given, and of course we are talking about all the users in this question. Then the second relevant section from the case study is planned changes. Here you can see that we have hired 125 new employees. So here we are basically talking about more number of employees, or you can also say that there is some bulk operation needed. Then one more section from case study is technical requirements. And friends, one important disclaimer here. These sections which I'm showing you here will not be given in the real exam. It's just that we are presenting you with this so that you can understand how to relate the sections from the case study to that of the question. Now let me give you the correct answer. The correct answer for this question is admin 2 only. Why? The justification comes here. Because to bulk create the users, I already pointed out that we are talking about 125 new employees. So it says to bulk create users in Azure AD administration portal, you must be signed in as global administrator or user administrator. Only admin 2 has the user administrator role to perform this task. I hope you can see here that only admin 2, which is the user administrator, has the relevant access, or I can say the relevant role to perform this action. Once again, I'm telling you that please read the case studies very carefully. You can read them once, twice, thrice, but please be very vigilant because case studies are confusing and you must understand how to map case study sections with questions. And here a quick reminder, please watch the earlier 5 parts with many such case studies, including Microsoft generic guidelines along with tips and tricks that you can use while giving the exam. The links for all the earlier parts are right there in the description box. And if you are new to this channel, please consider subscribing as we bring a lot of cloud certification course content on a regular basis. Now here comes our question number 2. It says that you need to implement the planned changes for user 1 and user 2. What should you do first? Your options are create 2 new resource groups. The second option is create 2 new management groups. The third option is create 2 new named locations. And the fourth option is create 2 new administrative units. And once again, before telling you the answer, let me tell you the sections of the case study which are related. Once again, we have existing environment. Now that we are again talking about the users, this is the relevant section from the case study. Along with this section, we also have planned changes section and the technical requirement section. You can read all these sections very carefully and try to understand how these sections relate to this question. Now let me give you the correct answer. The correct answer is option D, create 2 new administrative units. Why? The justification comes here. So basically, you use administrative units to logically group Azure AD resources and you first create the administrative units for each location. You can then assign user 1 and user 2 the user administrative role for each of their associated administrative units and then add the users and groups that should be the managed members. Now let's move ahead with the question number 3. It says that you need to implement the planned changes for disk 1. What should you do first? Your options are, the first one is add the Blackboard sub 1 and Blackboard sub 2 to a new management group. The second option is remove lock 1 from the resource group 1. The third option is modify RG1 tag. And the fourth option is remove lock type 2 from resource group 2. So could you guess the correct sections from the case study which are related to this question? Well, let me tell you. So this is the section related to the question number 3, where we were given the details on existing environment, followed by the details on 2 resource group 1 and resource group 2. We also checked out the details, what are the resources included in both of these resource groups. Now let's go back to our question. So here we come back in the question. The correct answer for this question is option B, remove lock 1 from the resource group 1. The justification comes here. It says to move a resource between resource groups, you need to first remove any locks associated with the resource. Now friends, you might have a doubt here that in the question we are talking about disk 1. However, when it comes to removal of lock, here we are talking about removing a lock from resource group 1. But why this is so? Because actually we have to do the changes in disk 1. The reason is that disk 1 has inherited lock from the resource group 1. So basically my friends, in case you're working in Azure, please remember that whenever you have a lock on the resource group level, the same lock or the lock type is also inherited by the resources under that resource group. And that's why we have to remove the lock from the resource group 1. I hope you understood this logic of lock inheritance. Now let's move ahead. But before that, friends, if you feel that we are doing a good work, Please like and share our videos. It really helps our channel to grow and bring more such quality content absolutely free for you. And just so you know, we also have hugely successful question and answer series on AZ-900, DP900, AI900, DP203, and also full course series on Azure fundamentals. Links to all these series are given in the description box. And now let me present the question number 4. It says that which storage accounts meet the technical requirements? Your options are Blackboard Storage 1 and Blackboard Storage 4 only. The second option is Blackboard Storage 2 and Blackboard Storage 3 only. The third option is Blackboard Storage 1 and Blackboard Storage 3 only. The fourth option is Blackboard Storage 2 and Blackboard Storage 4 only. Now friends, for the question number 4, this question and the next question, question number 5, I will not give you the details on which section from the case study actually relates to the questions. Consider this as a homework. I will be really happy if you tell me the correct sections which are related to question number 4 and question number 5. I will give a heart in the comment section to the correct answers so that everyone knows the correct sections. And for now, let me give you the correct answer. The correct answer is option C, Blackboard Storage 1 and Blackboard Storage 3 only. But surely I will give you the justification. Justification is that lifecycle management policies applies rules to supported storage account to control the transition of data to cooler storage tiers. Lifecycle management policies are supported for block blobs and append blobs in general purpose version 2, premium block blob and blob storage account. File storage and general purpose version 1 storage account do not support lifecycle management. I hope you understood the justification. Please read the justifications very carefully. There can be similar but twisted questions in the actual examinations. Now let's move ahead with the question number 5, which is the last question in this case study. The question says that you need to address the issue that relates to the Blackboard Storage 2. The solution must meet the security requirements. What should you do? The first option given is set a rotation reminder for the access keys. The second option is configure a lifecycle management rule. The third option is create a new access review. And the fourth option is generate a shared access signature, also known as SAS. And the correct answer for question number 5 is option D, generate a shared access signature. And why this is so? Because a shared access signature provides a secure delegated access to the resources in your storage account. You can use SAS to provide granular controls such as how long access is valid, what permissions do they have on resource, and what resource the client may access. If you want to deep dive in Azure fundamental concepts, do watch our full course series on Azure fundamentals. Links are there in the description box and in the pinned comment. So I hope you learned a lot of new concepts and understood how to deal with case studies in the exam. Still, in case you have some questions or doubts, do reach me in the YouTube comment section or via any other social media platform. And once again, my friends, before you jump on to another learning video, it's only you, the viewers, who have the power to help us grow. So please support us, like and share our videos, and please do not miss to subscribe. Best of luck for your exams. Thank you so much for learning with us. I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.
If this video has added any value in your learning, a like and subscribe is highly appreciated. Share this video in your family and friends to spread and expand their learning. Your comments and feedback give me a chance to interact with you, and I look forward for them. We will meet again in our next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.